The dust never settled in Mojave, California, and neither did the hunger that gnawed at Olivia Dawson's belly as she watched the marshal drag another accused man toward the gallows in the scorching summer heat of 1883. She pressed herself against the weathered wooden post outside the general store, her threadbare dress hanging loose on her frame after 3 days without proper food. The coins she had earned washing clothes at the boarding house had barely covered her room for the week, and now her stomach cramped with emptiness. In her pocket, she clutched the single-dollar bill that represented her only chance at a meal before she would have to wait 2 more days for any work to come through. The commotion in the town square drew a crowd, and Olivia found herself swept along with the tide of curious onlookers. A young man, no more than 25 by her estimation, stood with his hands bound behind his back. His dark hair fell across his forehead, damp with sweat, and blood trickled from a cut above his eye. His clothes marked him as a drifter, a cowboy without a herd, the kind of man the law looked at sideways in these parts. "Warren James," the marshal announced, his voice carrying across the assembled townspeople. "You stand accused of stealing a horse from Benjamin Cooper. The punishment is hanging, to be carried out at sundown." Olivia watched as the young cowboy lifted his chin, his jaw set with defiance despite the fear she could see flickering in his green eyes. Something about the set of his shoulders, the way he refused to bow his head even in the face of death, stirred something in her chest. "I did not steal that horse," Warren called out, his voice strong and clear. "I was trying to return it to Cooper's ranch. I found it wandering loose near the canyon." "That is what a thief would say," the marshal replied dismissively. "Cooper saw you riding his property on his horse. That is evidence enough." The crowd murmured, some nodding in agreement, others shifting uncomfortably. Olivia had seen this brand of justice before in Mojave. The marshal was a friend of Benjamin Cooper, and Cooper was a man who did not like strangers on his land, regardless of their intentions. She had heard stories of Cooper's cruelty, his tendency to shoot first and ask questions never. As the marshal led Warren toward the jail to await his execution, Olivia noticed the cowboy stumble. His face was pale beneath the dirt and blood, and she realized he must not have eaten in days either. The marshal yanked him upright roughly, and Warren's legs nearly gave out again. Without fully understanding why, Olivia found herself following them to the jail. She waited outside as the marshal locked Warren in the single cell that served as Mojave's holding area for the condemned. When the marshal left, likely headed to the saloon to celebrate another successful arrest, Olivia approached the barred window. "Are you hungry?" she asked quietly. Warren lifted his head from where he sat slumped against the adobe wall. Up close, she could see he was younger than she had first thought, probably close to her own age of 22. His eyes, despite their exhaustion, held a spark of something genuine. "I have not eaten in 4 days," he admitted, his voice rough. "But I imagine that does not matter much now." Olivia looked down at the dollar bill in her hand. It was meant to buy her the stew and bread that would keep her going until she could earn more. Her stomach twisted painfully, reminding her of its emptiness. But looking at this man, this stranger who was about to die for a crime she suspected he had not committed, she made a decision that would alter the course of both their lives. "Wait here," she said, then nearly laughed at the absurdity of her words. He was locked in a cell with no key and no hope. She walked quickly to the boarding house where she rented her small room. Mrs. Patterson, the owner, was known for her charitable nature, though her charity only extended so far. Olivia found her in the kitchen, preparing the evening meal. "Mrs. Patterson, I need to ask you something of great importance," Olivia began, her words tumbling out quickly. "There is a man in the jail condemned to hang at sundown. I believe he is innocent, but more than that, he is starving. I have $1, and I would like to use it to buy his freedom if there is any way, or at least to buy him a proper last meal." Mrs. Patterson set down her wooden spoon and studied Olivia with shrewd eyes. "Child, $1 will not buy a man's freedom from the marshal, especially not when Benjamin Cooper wants him dead. But if you want to use your only money to feed a stranger, I suppose that is your choice to make. Could you spare a plate of food, your stew and bread? I will pay you the $1. The older woman's expression softened slightly. "Keep your $1, girl. If you are determined to show kindness to a dying man, I will not profit from it, but think carefully. You have not eaten properly yourself." "I am certain," Olivia said, though her stomach protested the decision. Mrs. Patterson prepared a generous plate of beef stew, thick with vegetables and potatoes, and wrapped several pieces of fresh bread in cloth. "Take this to him, then. And Olivia, be careful. The marshal does not like people interfering with his prisoners." Olivia carried the food back to the jail, checking to make sure the marshal was still occupied at the saloon. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. She had perhaps 2 hours before the execution. Warren stood when he saw her approach with the plate. "You came back. I brought you food," she said, passing the plate and bread through the bars. "It is not much, but it is warm and filling." He took the plate with shaking hands, and she saw tears well in his eyes. "Why would you do this? You do not even know me. I know that you are about to die, possibly for something you did not do, and that you are hungry. That is enough." Warren ate slowly at first, then with more urgency, as though his body was remembering what it meant to be nourished. Between bites, he looked at her with an expression of wonder and gratitude. "What is your name?" he asked. "Olivia Dawson." "I am Warren James, though I suppose you already knew that." He finished the stew and bread, setting the plate down carefully. "That was the best meal I have ever had, and I have had many in my 24 years. Thank you does not seem sufficient." "You are welcome," Olivia said simply. They stood in silence for a moment, and then Warren spoke again, his voice urgent. "Listen, that horse I was riding, I truly did find it loose. I worked for Cooper 2 years ago, before he fired me for speaking up when he beat one of his ranch hands nearly to death. I recognized the brand, and I was bringing the animal back because it was the right thing to do. But Cooper, he saw an opportunity to settle an old score." "I believe you," Olivia said, surprised to find that she did. "Then help me," Warren said, gripping the bars. "Not for my sake, but because if Cooper can do this to me, he will do it to others. There has to be someone in this town who knows the truth, who will speak up." Olivia thought of Mrs. Patterson, of the few shopkeepers who had shown her kindness since she had arrived in Mojave 6 months ago after her parents had died of fever. She thought of how quickly she had learned that justice in this town was often decided by who had the most money and influence. "I will try," she promised, though she had no idea how she would succeed where Warren's own pleas had failed. She spent the next hour moving through the town, knocking on doors and asking if anyone had witnessed Warren near the canyon, if anyone could vouch for his character. Most people shut their doors quickly, not wanting to cross Cooper or the marshal. But finally, she found someone who would listen. Jacob Morrison was an older cowboy who had worked various ranches in the area for decades. He sat on the porch of his small house on the edge of town, smoking a pipe and watching the sunset. "Mr. Morrison," Olivia said breathlessly, having run most of the way, "I need your help. Warren James is about to be hanged for stealing a horse, but I believe he is innocent." Morrison studied her for a long moment. "I know the boy. Worked alongside him at Cooper's place a while back. He was honest, hardworking. It did not sit right with me when I heard about the accusation. Will you speak to the marshal? Tell him what you know about Warren's character. The old cowboy sighed heavily. Miss, the marshal is not interested in character references. He has made up his mind, and Cooper has made it worth his while to see this through. Then what can we do? Olivia asked desperately. There must be something. Morrison was quiet for a moment, then stood. There might be one thing. The circuit judge is staying at the hotel tonight, passing through on his way to Los Angeles. If we could convince him to review the case, he has the authority to overrule the marshal. Hope flared in Olivia's chest. Where can I find him? The hotel dining room, but you best hurry. Sundown is not far off. Olivia ran to the hotel, her worn boots kicking up dust. She burst into the dining room, drawing startled looks from the few diners. A distinguished man with gray hair and a neat suit sat alone at a corner table, reading a newspaper. Judge, please, I need to speak with you, she said, approaching his table without invitation. He looked up, his eyebrows raised. Young lady, I am having my dinner. A man is about to be hanged, and I believe he is innocent. Please, you have to review his case. The judge set down his fork. What is your connection to this case? I have none, except that I gave him my last meal and I spoke with him, and I believe he is telling the truth about finding that horse, not stealing it. Something in her desperation must have moved him, because the judge stood. Very well. Take me to the jail, I will hear what he has to say. With the judge following, Olivia rushed back to the jail. The marshal was just arriving, keys in hand, ready to take Warren to the gallows. The sun was touching the horizon, painting everything in blood-red light. Marshal, hold your execution, the judge commanded. I am reviewing this case. The marshal's face darkened. Judge, with respect, this is my jurisdiction, and I am a circuit judge with authority over all jurisdictions in this territory. Now open that cell and bring the prisoner somewhere we can talk properly. Grumbling, the marshal unlocked the cell. Warren emerged, his eyes finding Olivia immediately. The gratitude and hope in his expression made her heart clench. They gathered in the marshal's office, and the judge questioned Warren thoroughly. Warren explained everything, his voice steady despite his fear. He described finding the horse near Dead Man's Canyon, how he had recognized the Cooper brand, and how he had been riding toward the ranch when Cooper and his men had intercepted him. Did anyone see you find this horse? The judge asked. No, sir. I was alone. Then it is your word against Cooper's. Not entirely, came a voice from the doorway. Jacob Morrison stepped inside, hat in hand. Judge, I have known Warren James for 2 years. He is as honest as they come. I have also known Benjamin Cooper for 20 years, and he is as crooked as a snake's path. Cooper has been wanting to settle a score with this boy since Warren stood up for one of his ranch hands. This smells like a setup to me. The judge considered this, then turned to the marshal. Did you investigate the scene where Cooper claims he caught James? The marshal shifted uncomfortably. Cooper's word was good enough. That is not an investigation, that is favoritism. The judge stood. I am overturning this conviction. Warren James, you are free to go. The marshal's face went purple with rage, but he could not argue with the judge's authority. Warren stood slowly, as if afraid to believe it was real. Olivia felt tears of relief sliding down her cheeks. She had not realized how much she had invested in this stranger's survival until this moment. Warren walked out of the jail a free man, with Olivia beside him and Morrison following. Once outside, Warren turned to her, and in the dying light of the sunset, she saw his eyes were wet. You saved my life, he said simply. You gave up your meal for me, a stranger, and then you fought for my freedom when you had no reason to. I do not know how to repay such a debt. You do not owe me anything, Olivia said, but even as she spoke the words, she knew they were not entirely true. Something had shifted between them, something unspoken but powerful. Morrison clapped Warren on the shoulder. "Boy, you need to get out of Mojave. Cooper will not take this lying down, and the marshal is his friend. You are not safe here." Warren nodded slowly, then looked at Olivia. "Will you walk with me a bit? I would like to talk with you before I go." They walked together through the quiet streets as full darkness fell. The desert air cooled quickly once the sun set, and Olivia shivered in her thin dress. Without a word, Warren shrugged off his worn jacket and draped it around her shoulders. It smelled of dust and sweat and something else, something distinctly masculine that made her heart beat faster. "I mean what I said," Warren told her as they walked. "You saved my life today. That is not something I will ever forget." "What will you do now?" Olivia asked. "Morrison is right. I need to leave Mojave at least for a while. Maybe head up north, find work on a ranch where Cooper's influence does not reach." He paused, then added quietly, "But I find myself reluctant to go." "Why?" He stopped walking and turned to face her. In the moonlight, his features were softened, made almost beautiful by the silver glow. "Because leaving means never seeing you again, and that feels wrong somehow. Like walking away from something important before I even know what it is." Olivia's breath caught. She had felt it too, that connection, that sense of recognition when their eyes had met. But what could come of it? She was a laundress with nothing to her name, and he was a cowboy running from a powerful enemy. "I am nobody," she said quietly. "Just a girl trying to survive in a hard town." "You are the woman who gave her last meal to a condemned stranger," Warren said. "You are the woman who fought for justice when everyone else looked away. That is not nobody, Olivia. That is somebody extraordinary." His words warmed something in her that had been cold for a very long time. Since her parents had died, she had felt adrift, alone, invisible. But Warren saw her. "I have to think about my future too," she found herself saying. "About where I will go, what I will do. There is nothing for me here in Mojave except washing other people's clothes and barely scraping by." Warren reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. When she did not, he took her hand in his. His palm was calloused and warm, his grip gentle but firm. "Then come with me," he said. "I know we just met, and I know I have no right to ask, but come with me. We can find a better place, start fresh. I will work hard, I will provide for you, and I will spend every day trying to be worthy of what you did for me today." "You do not know me," Olivia protested, even as her heart leaped at the possibility. "I know enough. I know you have courage and compassion. I know you are willing to sacrifice your own comfort for what is right. The rest we can learn together." It was madness. It was impulsive and reckless and completely illogical. But as Olivia stood there, holding the hand of this cowboy she had just met, she realized she had nothing to lose and everything to gain. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will come with you." The smile that broke across Warren's face was like sunrise, bright and warm and full of promise. He squeezed her hand gently. "We will leave tomorrow early, before Cooper knows what is happening. Pack whatever you need. I will meet you at the edge of town at dawn." That night, Olivia lay awake in her small room at the boarding house, wondering if she had lost her mind. She was planning to leave with a man she barely knew, to travel to an uncertain destination with no guarantee of safety or security. But every time doubt crept in, she remembered the look in Warren's eyes when he had promised to spend his life being worthy of her sacrifice. She remembered his genuine gratitude, his obvious honesty. And beneath all the practical concerns, there was something else, something she barely dared to acknowledge. When he had held her hand, when he had looked at her in the moonlight, she had felt a spark of something that might, with time and care, grow into love. She packed her few belongings in a worn carpet bag. A change of clothes, her mother's silver brush, the few coins she had managed to save. It all fit easily. Her entire life reduced to one small bag. Before the sun rose, she left a note for Mrs. Patterson, thanking her for her kindness and explaining that she was leaving town. Then she slipped out into the pre-dawn darkness and made her way to the edge of Mojave. Warren was waiting where he had promised, sitting on a brown mare that looked sturdy and well cared for. When he saw Olivia approaching, he dismounted and came to meet her. "You came," he said, and she could hear the relief in his voice. "I said I would." He took her bag and secured it behind his saddle, then helped her mount. She settled in front of him, and when he swung up behind her, his arms came around her to hold the reins. The intimacy of the position made her blush, but she also felt safe, protected. "Where are we going?" she asked as they started riding north. "I heard there is good ranch work in Bakersfield," Warren said. "It is about a week's ride from here. We will take it slow, rest when we need to." They rode through the desert as the sun rose, painting the landscape in shades of pink and gold. Olivia had never been outside of Mojave, and despite her uncertainty about the future, she felt a thrill of excitement at seeing new places. They stopped at midday to rest the horse and eat the provisions Warren had packed, simple fare of dried beef and hardtack, but Olivia ate gratefully. As they sat in the shade of a Joshua tree, Warren talked about his life. "I grew up in Texas," he said, "on a small ranch my father owned. He taught me everything about horses and cattle, about being a good man. He died when I was 18 and my mother followed a year later. The ranch was sold to pay debts, and I have been drifting since then, looking for a place that feels like home." "I am sorry about your parents," Olivia said softly. "I lost mine too just last winter. Fever took them both within a week of each other. So we are both orphans trying to find our way." Warren's hand found hers again, and this time the touch felt natural, right? "Maybe we can find it together." As they continued their journey over the following days, Olivia and Warren talked endlessly, learning about each other in the way of people who know their connection is precious and worth nurturing. Warren told her about his dreams of someday owning a small piece of land, raising horses. Olivia shared her love of reading, how her mother had taught her from the few books they had owned, and how she had always wanted to see the ocean. "Then we will go to the ocean someday," Warren promised. "After we get settled and save some money, I will take you to see it." They slept separately at night, Warren always maintaining a respectful distance, though Olivia sometimes caught him watching her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. She was growing to care for him deeply, this man who treated her with such courtesy and consideration, who made her laugh with his stories and listened intently when she spoke. On the 5th night of their journey, they made camp near a small stream. As Olivia washed her face in the cool water, she heard Warren call out a warning. She turned to see 2 men on horseback approaching their camp, and her heart sank when she recognized one of them as Samuel Cooper, Benjamin Cooper's eldest son. Warren stepped in front of Olivia protectively. "What do you want, Samuel?" "You know what I want," Samuel said, dismounting. He was a large man, thick with muscle and mean-spirited cruelty. "You embarrassed my father, made him look like a liar in front of the whole town. We cannot let that stand." "The judge declared me innocent," Warren said calmly, though Olivia could see the tension in his shoulders. "Go home, Samuel. This is over." "It is over when I say it is over." Samuel moved forward threateningly, and his companion, a wiry man Olivia did not recognize, circled around to the side. "Leave him alone," Olivia said, stepping out from behind Warren. "He has done nothing wrong, and you know it. Your father tried to have an innocent man hanged because of a grudge." Samuel's eyes moved to her, and his expression turned calculating. "Well now, is this the little dove who saved you?" "Pretty thing. Maybe I will take her along when I am done with you, James. Teach her what happens to people who cross the Coopers." Warren moved so fast, Olivia barely saw it. One moment he was standing still, the next his fist connected with Samuel's jaw, sending the larger man staggering backward. The wiry man lunged at Warren, but Warren sidestepped and landed another blow to his midsection. The fight was brutal and quick. Despite being outnumbered, Warren fought with the desperation of a man protecting something precious. When Samuel pulled a knife, Olivia screamed, but Warren grabbed his wrist and twisted until the knife fell to the ground. "I do not want to hurt you," Warren said, breathing hard, blood dripping from his split lip. "But I will if you force me to. Leave now, and tell your father that if he comes after me or Olivia again, I will go to the circuit judge and tell him everything I know about his illegal activities. I worked for him, remember. I know about the cattle he has stolen, the brands he has altered, the men he has cheated." Samuel, nursing his bruised jaw, glared at Warren with pure hatred. But he must have seen something in Warren's eyes that convinced him this was not a fight he could win. He and his companion mounted their horses and rode off into the darkness, but not before Samuel called back. "This is not over, James." When they were gone, Warren turned to Olivia, his hands gentle as he checked her for injuries. "Did they hurt you? Are you all right?" "I am fine," she said, but her hands were shaking. "You are the one who is bleeding." She tended to his wounds with water from the stream and strips torn from an old shirt. As she cleaned the cut on his lip, their faces were close together, and she could feel his breath on her cheek. "Thank you for protecting me," she whispered. "Always," Warren said. "I will always protect you, Olivia. That is a promise." The intensity in his voice, the fierce devotion in his eyes, made something inside her shift and settle. This was not just gratitude anymore, not just a practical arrangement. She was falling in love with Warren James, this cowboy who fought for what was right and who looked at her like she was something precious. "Warren," she began, not sure what she wanted to say, only knowing she needed to say something. But he understood. He always seemed to understand. He cupped her face gently in his calloused hands and kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. Olivia kissed him back, pouring all her feelings into that single moment of connection. When they pulled apart, both were breathless. "I know it has only been a few days," Warren said quietly, "but I am falling in love with you, Olivia Dawson. I think maybe I started falling the moment I saw you standing outside that jail with food you could not afford to give away." "I am falling in love with you too," she admitted, and saying the words out loud made them real and powerful. They held each other that night, still chaste but close, and Olivia felt safer than she had in years. They reached Bakersfield a week after leaving Mojave, both of them dusty and tired but hopeful. The town was larger than Mojave, more prosperous, with wide streets and well-maintained buildings. Warren found work quickly at a ranch outside of town, owned by a fair-minded man named Robert Fletcher, who cared more about a man's work ethic than his past. Olivia found a room at a respectable boarding house for women and got a job at the general store, keeping the books and helping customers. The pay was better than washing clothes, and the work was easier on her hands. Every Sunday, Warren would ride into town, cleaned up and carrying wildflowers he had picked along the way. They would attend church together, then spend the afternoon walking and talking, their courtship proper and sweet. The town got used to seeing them together, and people began to refer to Olivia as Warren's girl, a designation that made her heart soar. 3 months after they arrived in Bakersfield, Warren asked Mr. Fletcher for a word. The older rancher listened to Warren's request, then smiled broadly. boy, I have been wondering when you would get around to asking. You have my blessing, provided the young lady says yes." That Sunday, Warren arrived in town earlier than usual, his face bright with nervous excitement. He took Olivia to a spot outside of town where wildflowers grew in abundance and the view stretched for miles. "Olivia," he began, taking both her hands in his, "I know I do not have much. I am just a cowboy with dreams bigger than my bank account, but I love you with everything I am. You saved my life in every way a person can be saved. You gave me hope when I had none, and you have given me a reason to build a future instead of just drifting through life. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Olivia's face as she nodded. "Yes, Warren. Yes, I will marry you." He pulled out a simple gold band that he had been saving for weeks to buy. It fit perfectly on her finger, catching the afternoon sunlight. He kissed her then, no longer restrained by propriety, and Olivia kissed him back with all the love and passion she had been holding inside. They were married a month later in the little church in Bakersfield, with Mr. and Mrs. Fletcher standing as witnesses. Olivia wore a simple white dress that Mrs. Fletcher had helped her sew, and Warren wore his best clothes, his hair neatly combed and his face shining with joy. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Warren kissed her with such tenderness that Olivia heard several of the women in attendance sigh romantically. This was everything she had never dared to dream of. A man who loved her, a future bright with possibility, a place to belong. Mr. Fletcher gave them a small house on his property as a wedding gift, a 2-room cabin that needed work but had good bones. Warren spent his evenings and days off fixing it up, making it perfect for his bride. Olivia made curtains and planted a garden, transforming the rough cabin into a home. Their wedding night was tender and sweet, both of them nervous but eager. Warren was gentle with her, patient and caring, making sure she felt loved and cherished. Afterward, they lay tangled together, and Olivia traced the scar above his eye, the one from the day they had met. "Do you ever regret it?" Warren asked quietly. "Giving up that meal, leaving Mojave, choosing me?" "Never," Olivia said firmly. "You are the best decision I ever made." "I still feel like I need to repay you," Warren said. "For that meal, for fighting for my freedom, for believing in me." "You already have," Olivia said. "Every single day, with every kind word and loving gesture, you have repaid me 1,000 times over." But Warren was not satisfied. He was determined to build a life for her that would be worthy of her sacrifice, and he worked tirelessly toward that goal. He saved every spare penny, learning everything he could from Mr. Fletcher about ranching and horse breeding. A year after their wedding, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. Warren's joy was boundless. He treated her like she was made of glass, worrying over her constantly until she laughingly told him to stop fussing. "I am having a baby, not dying," she said, but secretly she loved his attentiveness. Their son was born in the spring of 1885, a healthy boy with Warren's green eyes and Olivia's dark hair. They named him Thomas James, after Warren's father. Warren held his son with shaking hands and tears streaming down his face. "Look what we made," he whispered. "Look at this perfect little person." Olivia watched her husband cradle their child and felt her heart might burst with happiness. This life, this family, had all started because she had chosen kindness over hunger, compassion over self-preservation. As Thomas grew from a baby into a toddler, Warren continued working and saving. 3 years after their marriage, he came home one evening with papers in his hand and excitement in his eyes. "Olivia, come look at this," he said, spreading the papers on their kitchen table. "It is a deed. Mr. Fletcher is selling me 50 acres on the northern edge of his property at a price I can afford. We can build our own ranch, raise our own horses. It is happening." They broke ground on their ranch house that fall. It was modest but well built, with 3 bedrooms and a large kitchen. Warren built it with his own hands, with occasional help from other ranch hands who had become friends. Every nail he hammered, every board he placed, was done with love and determination. By the time they moved into their new house, Olivia was pregnant again. Their daughter, Sarah, was born in the winter of 1888, a beautiful girl with Warren's smile and strong spirit. Thomas, now 3 years old, was fascinated by his baby sister, always wanting to help care for her. The ranch prospered under Warren's careful management. He had a gift with horses, a gentle way that made even the most skittish animal trust him. Word spread, and people started coming from miles around to buy horses that Warren had trained. But Warren never forgot where he had come from, and he never forgot the kindness that had saved his life. Whenever a drifter came by looking for work or a meal, Warren always said yes. He hired men that others would not give a chance to, offering fair wages and a place to sleep. More than one cowboy found his feet again on Warren James's ranch. "Why do you always help them?" Olivia asked one evening, watching Warren give a young man who had just shown up some food and directions to the bunkhouse. "Because someone helped me when I needed it most," Warren said simply. "Because you showed me that one act of kindness can change a life. I am just paying it forward." Olivia kissed him then, overwhelmed with love for this good man she had married. When Thomas was 10 and Sarah was 7, they had another child, a boy they named David. By then, the ranch was well established, and they could afford to hire more help, giving Warren more time with his family. He taught his children to ride, to respect the land and animals, to treat everyone with kindness regardless of their station. And he told them, over and over, the story of how he had met their mother. "Your mama saved my life," he would say, pulling Olivia close. "She gave up her last meal so I could eat, and then she fought for my freedom when no one else would. Everything we have, everything we are, started with her courage and compassion." The children loved the story, asking to hear it again and again. But they also saw, every day, how their father showed his gratitude not just in words but in actions. The way he always made sure Olivia had fresh flowers on the table. The way he would run her a bath after a long day and wash her hair for her. The way he looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Warren took Olivia on a trip. He arranged for the children to stay with the Fletchers, and then he took his wife to the coast, fulfilling the promise he had made all those years ago. Olivia stood on the beach in Santa Barbara, her toes in the sand, watching the waves roll in. The ocean was more beautiful than she had imagined, vast and powerful and endlessly changing. "Worth the wait?" Warren asked, his arm around her waist. "Worth everything," she said. They spent 3 days by the ocean, walking the beaches, eating in restaurants, staying in a real hotel. It was the most luxurious experience of Olivia's life, and she treasured every moment, but mostly she treasured being alone with her husband, reconnecting without the demands of children and ranch. On their last night, they walked along the beach under the stars. Warren stopped and turned to face her, taking her hands in his. "I have spent 10 years trying to repay you for what you did in Mojave," he said. 10 years trying to build a life worthy of your sacrifice. But I realize now that no matter how long I live, no matter what I achieve, it will never be enough to truly repay you. Because you did not just save my life that day, Olivia. You gave it meaning. You gave it purpose. You gave it love." "Warren," she said softly, touching his face, "you have already given me more than I ever dreamed possible. A home, a family, a love that grows stronger every day. I do not need you to repay me. I just need you to keep loving me the way you do." "That is the easiest promise I have ever made," he said, and kissed her with the passion and tenderness of a man deeply in love. They returned to the ranch renewed and closer than ever. The years continued to pass, bringing both joys and challenges. There were hard winters and dry summers, sick animals and financial worries. But through it all, Warren and Olivia faced everything together, their love the foundation on which they built their life. When Thomas was 18, he started courting a girl from town, the daughter of the banker. Warren watched his son with pride, seeing the young man he had become, honest and hardworking and kind. "He reminds me of you at that age," Olivia said, watching Thomas ride off to see his sweetheart. "I hope he finds what we have," Warren said, pulling her close. "I hope he finds a woman who sees him for who he really is and loves him anyway." Sarah, at 15, was a spirited girl who loved the ranch and had her father's gift with horses. She spent hours in the corrals, training the young horses, her laughter ringing across the property. David, now 10, was quieter, more thoughtful, always with his nose in a book. Warren and Olivia loved each of their children fiercely, celebrating their differences and nurturing their unique gifts. One autumn day in 1898, a familiar face rode onto the ranch. Jacob Morrison, now in his 70s but still spry, dismounted carefully and greeted Warren with a firm handshake. "Jacob, what brings you all this way?" Warren asked, delighted to see his old friend. "Heard about your success," Morrison said, looking around at the thriving ranch. "Wanted to see it for myself, and to tell you that Benjamin Cooper died last month, drank himself to death. His ranch went to creditors, everything sold off." Warren was quiet for a moment, then said, "I am sorry to hear he died that way, but I am grateful we got away from his influence when we did." "You did more than get away," Morrison said. "You built something real here, something good. And from what I hear, you have helped a lot of young men get their start. That is a legacy to be proud of." That evening they had Morrison stay for dinner. The table was crowded with Warren and Olivia's family, and the conversation flowed freely. After the meal, Morrison pulled out a harmonica and played old cowboy songs, and they all sang along, watching her family, seeing the life they had built. Olivia felt overwhelming gratitude. It had all started with one impulsive decision, one act of compassion when she had been at her lowest point. And from that single choice, all of this had grown. Later, when everyone had gone to bed and she and Warren were alone, she said as much to him. "It is strange how life works," she mused. "If I had not walked past the jail that day, if I had not given you that meal, none of this would exist." "I think about that sometimes," Warren admitted. "About how close I came to dying and how different everything would be if you had walked past, if you had chosen to feed yourself instead. It terrifies me and humbles me in equal measure." "Well, I did not walk past," Olivia said firmly, "and I did choose to feed you, and I have never regretted it for a single moment." Warren kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "I love you, Olivia James. More today than yesterday, and less than I will tomorrow." As they lay together in the darkness of their bedroom, in the house Warren had built with his own hands, on the land he had bought through hard work and determination, Olivia reflected on how completely her life had changed. She had gone from a hungry, desperate woman in a dusty town to this, a beloved wife, a mother, a woman of means and respect, but more than any material success, what she treasured most was the love she shared with Warren. It was a love built on sacrifice and gratitude, on mutual respect and genuine partnership. It was a love that had weathered storms and celebrated triumphs, a love that grew deeper with each passing year. Thomas married his sweetheart in the summer of 1899, and Warren gave him a piece of land adjacent to the main ranch to start his own place. The young couple built a small house and started their life together, and Warren and Olivia watched with joy as their son became a husband. Sarah, at 16, announced that she wanted to start a horse breeding program specifically for quality riding horses. Warren supported her dream, helping her select the best breeding stock and teaching her everything he knew about bloodlines and training techniques. Olivia watched her daughter flourish, proud of her independence and skill. David, at 11, was still their quiet scholar, but he was also developing an interest in the business side of ranching. He kept meticulous records of expenses and income, helping Warren manage the finances with a precision that amazed them both. As the new century approached, Warren and Olivia stood on their porch one evening, looking out over the land that had become their home. They were both in their early 40s now, their hair touched with gray, their faces lined by sun and time, but their love was as strong as ever. "You remember," Warren said quietly, "when I told you I would spend my life trying to repay you for what you did?" "I remember," Olivia said. "I still mean it," he said. "Every single day I wake up grateful that you chose to save me. Every single day I try to be the man you saw in me even when I was at my lowest. You made me want to be better, Olivia. You made me want to build something lasting." "And you did," she said, gesturing to the ranch, to the life they had created. "You built all of this. We built it together." "Together," Warren agreed, taking her hand. "That is the word that matters most, together." The years continued their steady march forward. Thomas and his wife had their first child, making Warren and Olivia grandparents. They doted on little Emma, spoiling her shamelessly and delighting in every milestone. Sarah, at 20, married a cowboy who worked on a neighboring ranch, a good man who respected her skills and supported her dreams. They remained on the James Ranch, with Sarah continuing to develop her breeding program, which was gaining a reputation across California. David surprised everyone by announcing at 18 that he wanted to study law. Warren and Olivia supported his dream, using their savings to send him to school in San Francisco. He would return home during breaks, full of stories about city life, but always glad to be back on the ranch. In 1905, Warren and Olivia celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary. Their children organized a party, inviting friends and neighbors from miles around. The ranch was filled with laughter and music, with people sharing stories about how Warren and Olivia had helped them over the years. One old cowboy, whom Warren had given a job to when no one else would, stood up and said, "Warren James is the most decent man I have ever known. He gave me a chance when I was down on my luck, just like someone once gave him a chance." That is the mark of a truly good man, passing on the kindness he received. Warren, embarrassed by the attention, pulled Olivia close and said, "If I am any kind of decent man, it is because this woman showed me what true goodness looks like. Everything I am, I owe to her." The room erupted in applause, and Olivia, tears in her eyes, kissed her husband soundly, not caring who was watching. That night, after everyone had gone home and the ranch was quiet again, Warren and Olivia sat on their porch watching the stars. 20 years, Olivia marveled. "It feels like both a lifetime and no time at all." "The best 20 years of my life," Warren said. "Though I expect the next 20 will be even better." "You are assuming we have another 20, Olivia teased gently. "With you by my side, I am planning on it," Warren said firmly. "I have too much living left to do, too many more sunsets to watch with you, too many more grandchildren to spoil." And indeed, the years brought more grandchildren. Thomas and his wife had 3 more children, and Sarah had 2. The ranch was often filled with the sounds of children playing, their laughter echoing across the land that Warren and Olivia had worked so hard to build. David finished law school and returned to Bakersfield, opening a practice in town but living on the ranch. He married a schoolteacher, a clever woman who loved books as much as he did, and they had twin boys who kept everyone on their toes. As Warren entered his 50s, he began to slow down slightly, his body feeling the effects of decades of hard ranch work. But his spirit remained strong and his love for Olivia never dimmed. If anything, it grew stronger, aged like fine wine into something rich and complex and beautiful. They had established a routine over the years. Every morning, Warren would bring Olivia coffee in bed. Every evening, they would sit on the porch together and talk about their day. Once a month, they would ride out to a favorite spot on their property, a hill overlooking the valley, and spend the afternoon together, reconnecting away from the demands of family and ranch. On one such afternoon, when Warren was 56 and Olivia was 54, they sat on their hill watching the clouds drift by. Warren had brought a blanket and a basket of food, and they had spent a pleasant few hours eating and talking and simply being together. "You know," Warren said, lying back on the blanket with his head in Olivia's lap, "I have been thinking about that day in Mojave a lot lately." "What about it?" Olivia asked, running her fingers through his gray-streaked hair. "About how I was absolutely certain I was going to die. I had made peace with it, accepted it, and then you appeared like an angel and changed everything." He took her hand and kissed her palm. "I think about how easily it could have gone differently, if you had walked past, if the judge had not been in town, if Morrison had not spoken up. So many small moments that could have changed everything. But they did not," Olivia said softly. "It all happened exactly as it was meant to. Do you believe that we were meant to find each other?" Olivia thought about it, about the series of events that had brought them together, about the life they had built. "Yes," she said finally. "I do. I think sometimes people are put in our path for a reason and we have to be brave enough to recognize it and act on it." "You were brave," Warren said. "Braver than anyone I have ever known." "We were both brave," Olivia corrected. "You asked me to leave with you, to trust you when you were just a stranger. That took courage too." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and then Warren said, "I want you to know something, Olivia. I know I have said it before, but I need to say it again. You saved my life, yes, but more than that, you gave my life meaning. Before you, I was just drifting, going through motions. You gave me purpose. You gave me a reason to build instead of just survive. Everything good in my life, everything that matters, came from that one moment when you chose compassion over hunger. And everything good in my life came from taking a chance on a cowboy with kind eyes," Olivia said, leaning down to kiss him. "We saved each other, Warren. That is what love does." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, they packed up their picnic and rode back to the ranch house. Their grandchildren were there, playing in the yard, and their children were gathered on the porch, talking and laughing. This, Warren thought, was what he had spent his life building. Not just the land and the house and the successful ranch, but this: family, love, legacy. And it had all started with Olivia's compassion, with her willingness to sacrifice for a stranger. He had spent 30 years trying to repay that debt, and he knew he would spend whatever time he had left continuing to try. Not because he felt obligated, but because loving Olivia, honoring her, cherishing her, was the greatest joy of his life. That evening, after the family had dispersed to their own homes, and the grandchildren had been put to bed, Warren and Olivia prepared for sleep. It was a routine they had performed thousands of times, but Warren never took it for granted, this simple intimacy of sharing a bed with the woman he loved. As they lay in the darkness, Olivia's head on his chest and his arms around her, Warren said quietly, "Thank you." "For what?" Olivia murmured, half asleep. "For everything. For that meal. For fighting for me. For coming with me. For building this life with me. For loving me. For giving me children and grandchildren and a reason to wake up every morning. For being you." His voice broke slightly on the last words, thick with emotion. Olivia lifted her head and kissed him, tasting the salt of tears she did not know if they were his or hers. "Thank you for being worth it," she whispered. "Thank you for becoming the man I knew you could be. Thank you for loving me so completely, so faithfully, for all these years. Thank you for our life together." They held each other close, two people who had found each other in the darkest moment and had built something luminous and lasting. Outside, the California night was cool and clear, stars blazing in the vast sky above their ranch, above the life they had created through love and dedication and unwavering commitment to each other. The years rolled on, bringing the joys and sorrows that come with a long life well lived. Warren's health began to fail in his 60s, his heart growing weaker. The doctors in town said there was nothing to be done except rest and take things easy. Warren, true to form, ignored most of their advice, still insisting on riding out to check on the horses and cattle, still working alongside his sons and hired hands. Olivia worried constantly, but she knew better than to try to keep Warren from the work he loved. Instead, she made sure he took breaks, that he ate properly, that he did not overexert himself. She was always there, watching over him with the same fierce protectiveness she had shown that day in Mojave. On a warm spring day in 1915, Warren was 65 and Olivia was 63. They sat on their porch, watching their youngest grandchildren play in the yard. Warren had been feeling poorly all day, his breath coming short, his color not good. Olivia had wanted to call the doctor, but Warren had refused. "I am fine," he insisted. "Just tired." But as the afternoon wore on, he grew worse. David, who had come by for dinner, took one look at his father and immediately rode for the doctor. The rest of the family gathered, sensing something was wrong. The doctor arrived and examined Warren, then pulled Olivia aside. "His heart is failing," he said quietly. "I am sorry, Mrs. James. It could be hours or it could be days, but there is nothing more I can do." Olivia felt the world tilt beneath her feet, but she straightened her spine and nodded. She had faced hardship before. She would face this too, though the thought of losing Warren made her feel like she was being torn apart. She returned to Warren's side, taking his hand. Their children and grandchildren gathered around, but Warren only had eyes for Olivia. "You are not giving up," she said fiercely. "Do you hear me, Warren James? You are not allowed to leave me yet." Warren smiled weakly. "I am not giving up, love. My body just cannot keep going forever as much as I wish it could." Over the next few days, Warren's condition deteriorated. He was moved to his bed, and Olivia rarely left his side. Their children came and went, saying their goodbyes, but Olivia remained constant, holding his hand, talking to him, reminding him of all the beautiful years they had shared. On the third night, when they were alone, Warren squeezed Olivia's hand weakly. "I need you to know," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "that I kept my promise. I spent my life trying to be worthy of what you did for me. Did I succeed?" Tears streamed down Olivia's face. "You succeeded every single day," she said. "Every day you loved me. Every day you were a good father and grandfather. Every day you helped someone in need. You succeeded. You have been everything I knew you would be and more." "Good," Warren said, relaxing slightly. "That is all I wanted. To make you proud, to build a life that honored your sacrifice." "You did," Olivia assured him. "You absolutely did." Warren's eyes drifted closed, then opened again with effort. Will you tell me about the ocean again, about that trip we took?" So Olivia talked, describing the beach in Santa Barbara, the sound of the waves, the feel of the sand beneath their feet. She talked about walking hand in hand as the sun set, about the way the water had looked endless and beautiful. She talked until Warren's breathing grew more labored, until she knew the end was near. "I love you," she whispered, leaning close. "I love you so much, Warren James. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. And you were everything," Warren murmured. "Everything." His eyes closed and his breathing slowed. Olivia held him, whispering words of love and comfort, until finally, peacefully, Warren James took his last breath in his wife's arms. The grief was overwhelming. Olivia felt as though a part of her had been ripped away. For 30 years, Warren had been her partner, her love, her best friend. The ranch felt empty without him, even filled with children and grandchildren. But as the weeks passed and Olivia began to emerge from the worst of her grief, she found comfort in what Warren had left behind. His legacy was everywhere. In the successful ranch, in their children who had grown into good and decent people, in the grandchildren who carried his name and his values, in the countless men he had helped over the years who still spoke of his kindness. Thomas took over running the ranch, with Sarah managing the breeding program and David handling the legal and financial aspects. They insisted that Olivia remain in the main house, that this would always be her home. She agreed, finding peace in being surrounded by family, by the echoes of the life she and Warren had built together. One day, a few months after Warren's death, a young man came to the ranch. He was thin and ragged, clearly down on his luck. Thomas was about to turn him away, having all the hands he needed, but Olivia stopped him. "Give him a meal and a place to sleep," she said, "and find him something to do, even if it is just for a few days." Thomas looked at his mother with understanding. "Because that is what father would have done." "That is what your father did do," Olivia said. "Someone gave him a chance when he needed it most. We honor his memory by doing the same." And so the James Ranch continued to be a place of second chances, of opportunity and kindness. Olivia lived for another 10 years after Warren's death, surrounded by the love of her family, secure in the knowledge that the life she and Warren had built together would continue long after they were both gone. She spent her final years telling stories to her great-grandchildren, making sure they knew about the cowboy who had been saved by a woman's compassion and who had spent his life repaying that debt. She told them about kindness and sacrifice, about love and dedication, about building something lasting. On a quiet evening in 1925, Olivia passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 73. Her family gathered for her funeral, and as they laid her to rest beside Warren, they spoke of her courage and compassion, of the choice she had made all those years ago that had changed so many lives. Thomas stood at his mother's grave and addressed the assembled family and friends. "My mother once gave her last meal to save a stranger's life. That act of compassion set in motion everything we are today. My father spent his life trying to repay her, but what he did not realize, what my mother tried to tell him over and over, was that they repaid each other every single day with their love and dedication and partnership. They built something beautiful together, something that will last for generations. That is their true legacy." As the mourners departed and the sun set over the ranch, the land that Warren and Olivia had built together stood as a testament to what could grow from a single act of kindness, from the decision to choose compassion over self-preservation, from the courage to take a chance on love. The James Ranch thrived for many more years, passed down through the generations. And every child born into the family learned the story of Warren and Olivia, of the cowboy who was saved by a woman's sacrifice, and the life they built together through love and determination. It became a family legend, a reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can have the most profound consequences, that love is worth fighting for, and that a life lived in service to others, and to love, is a life well lived. The land eventually grew into one of the most successful ranches in California, but more importantly, it remained a place where people in need could find help, where second chances were freely given, where kindness was valued above all else. The James family never forgot where they came from, never forgot the meal that started everything, never forgot the power of compassion to change lives. And on quiet evenings, when the desert wind blew across the ranch and the stars blazed overhead, it was almost as if Warren and Olivia were still there, still sitting on their porch, still holding hands, still building their legacy of love one day at a time. Their story lived on, told and retold, a reminder that true love is not just about passion and romance, though they had plenty of that. True love is about sacrifice and service, about choosing each other every day, about building something together that will outlast your own life. Warren spent his life trying to repay Olivia for saving him, but what he never fully understood was that she had already been repaid the moment he promised to spend his life being worthy of her gift. In the end, they had saved each other. They had built a beautiful life from the ashes of desperation and near death. They had loved deeply and completely, and their love had rippled out through generations, touching countless lives. The ranch house still stood decades later, weathered but strong, a monument to what two people could build when they loved each other with complete devotion. And sometimes, the family members who lived there swore they could hear laughter on the wind, could feel the presence of their ancestors who had started it all with one meal, one act of courage, one decision to choose love over fear. That was the true story of Warren James and Olivia Dawson, the cowboy and the woman who saved him, who built a legacy of love and kindness that would echo through time, proving that sometimes the greatest love stories start with the simplest acts of compassion and grow into something magnificent and enduring.